There is something living in your walls right now. You might not have seen it yet, but you have heard it, that faint scratching in the dark, that soft scurrying just past midnight when the house is quiet and you are lying there pretending you imagined it. You did not imagine it. Rodents are one of the most common household problems on the planet, and yet nobody wants to talk about just how bad the situation actually is. The pest control industry will tell you it is complicated. They will tell you it requires professional treatment, repeat visits, quarterly contracts, and a bill that never quite seems to end. And the stores will sell you trap after trap, poison after poison, device after device. And somehow, the problem keeps coming back. Here is what they are not telling you. The rodent problem in most homes is not a question of bad luck, it is not random, and it is absolutely not unsolvable. What it is a problem that has been solved before, long before the pest control industry existed, long before anyone was making money off your misery. Somewhere along the way, that solution got buried. Not because it stopped working, but because something that works permanently, costs almost nothing, and can be made in your own kitchen, that is not good for business. What you are about to hear is the thing they are hoping you never look up. Stay with me, because this changes everything. Now, let us talk about those traps. The snap traps, the glue boards, the little plastic contraptions with the bait wells and the spring mechanisms that promise you quick, clean, guaranteed results. You have probably bought at least one. Maybe you have bought a dozen. You set them up along the walls, behind the refrigerator, underneath the sink, exactly where the instructions told you to. And maybe you caught one. Maybe two. And for a day or two you thought, finally, this is over. And then you heard it again. That scratching, that scurrying, that unmistakable sound of something small and persistent living inside your walls at 2 in the morning. Here is what the packaging never tells you. Rodents are not stupid. They are actually remarkably intelligent animals with strong social memory. And when one member of a group disappears, near a specific spot in a specific location, the others learn. They learn fast. Within days, sometimes within hours, the surviving rodents in your home have already mapped that trap as a danger zone. They will walk around it. They will avoid it entirely. And that bait you placed inside, it sits there going stale while the rodents eat whatever they please from the rest of your home. And then there are the poisons. Rodenticides, they are called, and they are sold with an enormous amount of confidence. The promise is simple. The rodent eats it. The rodent dies. Problem solved. But here is what actually happens in most cases. The rodent does not always die where you can find it. It crawls into the deepest, most inaccessible part of your home, inside the walls, beneath the floorboards, somewhere you cannot reach, and it dies there. And then, for days or weeks, you live with a smell that no amount of air freshener can cover. And in some cases, secondary poisoning becomes a real concern, particularly if you have pets or children in the home. The risk never quite disappears. But perhaps the most dishonest part of all of this is the way these products are designed around repetition, not resolution. You run out of poison, you buy more poison. The trap breaks, you buy another trap. The ultrasonic device stops working, and studies have shown repeatedly that most ultrasonic devices have almost no lasting effect on rodent behavior at all, and so you buy a different one, a newer model, a stronger version. And the cycle continues. The pest control companies know this cycle better than anyone, because a customer who solves their rodent problem permanently is not a customer anymore. A customer who solves their rodent problem permanently is a lost revenue stream. So the industry built itself around solutions that manage rather than eliminate. Solutions that keep you coming back. Solutions that treat the symptom and never ever touch the cause. What you need is something that works on a completely different level altogether. And that is exactly where this starts to get interesting. So let's talk about what this actually is, because when most people first hear about it, they assume it sounds too simple, too old, too much like something a grandmother would whisper to you in a kitchen that smelled like dried herbs and wood smoke. And that instinct, that reflexive skepticism toward anything that doesn't come in a branded box with a warning label, that instinct is exactly what the industry has spent decades cultivating in you. The hanging bundle is, at its core, a cluster of specific natural plant materials, dried and bound together, and suspended in the spaces where rodents travel, nest, or enter. That's it. No batteries, no poison, no mechanism that breaks or wears out or needs replacing every 30 days. Just plants. Just the right plants, combined in the right way, placed in the right locations. Now, the specific combination matters enormously. This is not about grabbing whatever you have in your spice cabinet and tying it with a piece of twine. The plants that make this work have been identified and refined over centuries of practical use across multiple cultures on multiple continents. Traditional households in parts of Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, and the Mediterranean have documented versions of this practice going back hundreds of years. Farmers used it. Grain storage workers used it. People who could not afford to lose their food supply to rodents, people for whom a ruined harvest was a genuine catastrophe. Those people developed and passed down this knowledge because it worked. Not because it was charming folklore, because it worked. The core of the bundle typically centers around peppermint, but not in the diluted commercialized form you find in a spray bottle at a hardware store. Fresh-dried peppermint at high concentration combined with eucalyptus, and in many traditional versions, whole cloves and dried bay laurel. Some regional variations include wormwood, others incorporate dried citrus peel. The ratios matter. The dryness of the materials matters. And critically, the method of binding and hanging matters because it affects how the volatile compounds are released into the surrounding air. What this bundle does is create a sustained, concentrated zone of chemical signals that mice and rats interpret not as an unpleasant smell, but as a genuine biological threat. We'll go deeper into the science of exactly why that happens in just a moment. But the key distinction to understand right now is the difference between a scent that a rodent finds irritating and a scent that a rodent finds dangerous. One of those will cause a rodent to avoid a space temporarily. The other causes it to abandon that space entirely and not return. This bundle, made correctly, achieves the second, and it does it without a single synthetic chemical, without a single trap, without a single dead animal that you have to locate by smell 3 weeks later inside your wall. The pest control industry does not want this to be common knowledge. That much should already be obvious. But the question worth asking is how something this effective stayed hidden in plain sight for this long. So let's talk about what's actually happening at the biological level. Because this isn't folklore. This isn't superstition dressed up in old-world tradition. There is hard, documented science explaining why rodents respond to this bundle the way they do. And once you understand it, the whole thing clicks into place in a way that's almost unsettling in its simplicity. Mice and rats are, first and foremost, creatures of chemical communication. Their olfactory systems are not comparable to ours. Where a human nose contains roughly 6 million scent receptors, a mouse carries somewhere between 10 and 20 times that number. Their entire understanding of the world, where it's safe, where it isn't, where food is, where predators are, is built almost entirely on chemical information. They don't reason their way through a decision. They react to signals. Hardwired, instinctive, non-negotiable reactions that have been baked into their nervous systems over millions of years of survival. Now, certain volatile organic compounds, the kind released naturally by the ingredients in this bundle, don't just smell unpleasant to a rodent. They actively mimic the chemical signals that rodents associate with predator presence and environmental danger. We're talking about compounds that overlap at a neurological level with genuine threat markers. When a rodent's olfactory receptors encounter these signals at sufficient concentration, the response isn't curiosity. It isn't mild avoidance. It's an alarm response. A deeply ingrained biological instruction that says this territory is not safe and you do not belong here. That's the critical distinction. That's why the concentration matters. That's why the method of release matters. A weak, dissipating scent might register as background noise and get ignored, but a sustained, properly concentrated release of these compounds keeps that alarm signal active, continuously, day after day. The rodent doesn't adapt to it the way it might adapt to a noise deterrent or a one-time chemical application, because it isn't processing it as an annoyance. It's processing it as a biological warning it is not equipped to override. That's not a product. That's nature working exactly as it was designed to. So here's where it gets practical. Because knowing the science means nothing if you can't actually use it. The bundle itself is simple. Deceptively simple. You're going to take a small square of natural cloth. Burlap works well, cheesecloth works just as well. And you're going to fill it with a combination of dried peppermint, eucalyptus leaves, and cedar chips. Those three ingredients together are doing the heavy lifting. The peppermint delivers the high-concentration menthol compounds. The eucalyptus adds a secondary volatile layer that reinforces the signal. And the cedar grounds it, slowing the evaporation rate so the release stays consistent over time rather than spiking and fading within a day or two. You tie the cloth closed tightly, not loosely. You want the material compressing the contents so the release is controlled and concentrated, not wide open and dissipating all at once. Now, where you hang it matters just as much as what's in it. You're not placing this on a countertop. You're not tucking it into a corner. You're hanging it, suspended, at roughly the height rodents travel. Near entry points, along baseboards if you can find a way to suspend it low, inside cabinet spaces, in the garage near gaps in the wall. The goal is to position the bundle directly in the airflow paths that rodents use when they're moving through a space, so the compounds hit them before they've committed to entering. Replace the bundle every 3 to 4 weeks. The compounds do weaken over time, and you need that concentration maintained to keep the alarm signal active. That's it. No special equipment, no technician, no recurring subscription fee. Just cloth, 3 ingredients, and the understanding of why it works. And then you wait. Within the first 24 to 48 hours, most people report something almost unsettling in how quiet things get. The scratching behind the wall stops. The rustling in the cabinet at 2 in the morning, gone. No more droppings along the baseboard you'd been finding every single morning. Rodents that were moving through your space with complete confidence suddenly have no interest in being there anymore. They don't die. They don't get trapped. They simply leave and stop coming back. That's the part that surprises people most. Not a body to deal with, not a mess, just absence. Permanent, unbothered absence. Now here's what I need you to do. Save this video. Send it to someone you know who's been dealing with this problem. A neighbor, a family member, a friend who's been setting traps for months and getting nowhere. Because information like this has a funny way of quietly disappearing. Channels get flagged, videos get buried, and the people who profit from selling you the same failing products every season have every reason to make sure you never find something that actually works. So share it before that happens. Because the solution was always simple. They just needed you to never find out.